Your organization is building and updating business-critical web applications faster than ever. And with so much pressure to move fast, you may find yourself making trade-offs between innovation and security. Now you can build fast without sacrificing security with Invicti, the zero-noise application security platform that helps your dev, sec, and ops teams work together to secure every website, web app, and API. With unparalleled accuracy, coverage, and automation, Invicti scales like no other AppSec solution. Invicti, AppSec with zero noise. Visit securityweekly.com/Invicti. Struggling to secure all your applications with modern identity services? You're not alone. But with identity orchestration, you can say goodbye to refactoring and complexity. Strata Identity helps you modernize app identity at scale while mitigating security risks and simplifying policy management. Maintain a consistent security posture and simplify policy management with identity orchestration. If you're ready to simplify your identity environment and improve your app security, share your IAM challenge with the Strata team to get a brand new set of earbuds. Just visit securityweekly.com/strata to learn more. That's securityweekly.com/strata. Imperva is the comprehensive digital security leader on a mission to help organizations protect their data and all paths to it. Only Imperva protects all digital experiences, from business logic to APIs, microservices, the data layer, and from vulnerable legacy environments to cloud-first organizations. With an integrated approach combining network, application, and data security, Imperva protects companies ranging from cloud-native startups to global multinationals with hybrid infrastructure. Start a free trial today and quickly protect your web applications at securityweekly.com/Imperva. Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. We just talked with Shannon Leitz about resilience and Brave metrics, which is sort of like Alice DJ asking security, are you better off alone? This is our second interview segment this week. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with John Kinsella. John, hang around for a moment because you have to wait through an announcement because we have to asking people to join us at an upcoming official cybersecurity summit in a city near you. This series of one-day invitation-only executive-level conferences are designed to educate senior cyber professionals on the latest threat landscape. We're pleased to offer our listeners $100 off admission when you register with code SECWEEK23. Visit securityweekly.com/cybersecuritysummit to learn more and register today. Melinda Marks is a senior analyst at the Enterprise Strategy Group, where she covers application and cloud security. Her coverage area also includes cloud-native application protection platforms, cloud workload protection, cloud security posture management, DevSecOps, web application security testing, all the testing, that alphabet soup, and API security. She has over 20 years of experience in tech marketing and strategy. Her experience also includes running competitive market intelligence and product marketing teams at Tenable and running global communications for 4 years at Qualys. Hello, Melinda. Thank you for joining us.
Hey there. Great to see you guys.
Wonderful to have you here, and ran into you at RSA this year, and we were talking about shifting left, API security, all sorts of fun things that are a bit platitudes, but actually have some meat to them. And you, in fact, have been doing a lot of research recently on shifting left as well. So tell us a little bit about the research you've been doing.
Yeah, so the fun part about being an analyst is we get to do these research projects. And to me, it's, I worked at Qualys, worked at Tenable, worked at startups and container security and cloud native security. And there's always research and stats that I wanted to have on what are key trends, what are challenges that organizations face. So my first research project out of the gate was a project on developer-focused security. And for cloud native, everyone's been talking about shifting left because you have smaller security teams having to support development as it scales and the cycles that are a lot faster for cloud native development. So how can security support that? We've been talking about shift left for years now. So it was meant to be that the title of the paper is Walking the Line, Shift Left and GitOps Security. And it was supposed to be a little bit provocative. Like, we've been talking about shifting left for so long. How successful have you been? How far left have you been able to shift? And so we asked a lot of questions on challenges, pain points, and got a lot of interesting results just to see how successful people were, how security can work with developers, and it's just lots of good data.
So don't want to have complete spoilers for the report, but do give us a taste of, as you said, it's been years perhaps having this discussion. Mm-hmm. How have people been successful, or perhaps sometimes the more fun anecdotes are, what were the absolute failures, or just thrown over to the fence and here, okay, John, we shifted over to you, run with it.
Yeah, and I've blogged a little bit about this, kind of ranting about how I have some angst and issues around the shift left term, because I think with left, people have a misconception that it's left in the software development lifecycle. And to me, that's kind of based on older concepts of a more linear product lifecycle where you're developing, testing, staging, releasing, and then on the right is the runtime. And then the part that was driving me crazy is people saying, don't shift left, shift right. And then the word shift implies that you're shifting things, or there's a lot of worry about, oh, will I still have a security job if developers are going to be doing security? So, trying to get past that stuff and figure out how can security teams work with development in a way where, it's imperative that you shift security left to developers. And to me, when I talk about shift left, it's having more responsibilities for developers. So they're doing things like testing. And yes, it is early in the software development lifecycle that is the best way, because once you deploy it, it's out there. So that is better to do as much as you can in the preventative side, but it's also about making things easier for developers, helping them facilitate their work. They care about security. They just don't necessarily want to become security experts. So some of the findings of the report, we asked about what are the challenges, and challenges were things like security has no visibility of processes and tools that are taking place with development. We did find that with the survey, there was a high percentage of organizations who said they'd shifted left, but the way that they're shifting left in most cases was through cloud security platform tools, so tools from Amazon, AWS, other testing tools, just when they're developing their apps that they might use. They're also using a lot of open source tools, or they're building custom tools. And for security, there's a smaller number of vendor tools. And I think the security vendor tools, I think, caused some of the friction and confusion early on. So several years ago, it was this understanding that, yes, we do need to shift security left to developers. But for some security vendors, they kind of thought, well, that just means giving developers security tools. And when you try to get a security person or a developer to go use a security tool, that's not really going to work. They just want to work in their own tools and workflows. So things like that created the friction of, I'm a developer, I'm trying to do my job of developing. I don't want to take on security responsibilities, or maybe I do, but I can go find this open source tool and just do it. And I don't want to have to interact with the security team. Or every time I'm interacting with the security team, it's not a good experience because they're going to slow me down, or they're going to force me to do something that's going to slow things down. And I just need to build my product and deliver it on my timeline. So now there's been a good progression of better tools that work in their workflows, more understanding of some of the open source and orchestrating things that maybe happen in the background so that developers can just incorporate it. And then they know they have more confidence about, I don't want to have to do remediation work later. I don't want to spend a lot of time. Like once something's caught in runtime, it's going to be a lot harder for me to fix. With that kind of understanding and collaboration, that's where good things are happening.
And part of what you do is, it's in the title, strategy. And I think that translates to helping security teams, helping apps that get a right mindset for working with cloud native apps. And you mentioned tools quite a bit there. Mm-hmm. And we've talked in the past ourselves about developer-friendly tools. Mm-hmm. These are in the IDE. But tools seem like the wrong way to be maturing or adopting the idea of shifting left. Because, okay, we've got more tools, we're running more tools, whether they're developer-friendly or not. That feels like it's just, we've got tools, we've possibly got noise. Now we have even more vulns that we found, and we have to fix all the vulns, mm-hmm. which kind of is a setup for these are not necessarily the right mindsets, right? So what are the mindsets you talk to CISOs or AppSec teams about to approach this in ways that are successful? Whether, setting aside we can call it shifting or not, but that it's not just a tool-oriented mindset.
Yeah, really great question, because that's a lot of what I'm talking about now, especially I feel like last year was like the year of too many tools and alert fatigue, and everyone was trying to consolidate and do things in a better way because there's too many false positives. And yeah, I put in some tools, but now the developers are ignoring the alerts because there's just too many. And then on the security team side, I have too many things popping up. I don't know how to prioritize. So there has been that move to consolidating or thinking in a better way of how to solve these problems. And I do think there is a shift in the mindset that has to happen where, and I talk about this a lot, where in traditional security, you do think of that linear product development kind of cycle. And so you need to think of it's more dynamic now. And that was part of that kind of left-right complaining that I was doing earlier is you just have to realize you have to become enablers of development. Your role's going to change a little bit. I think the traditional security mindset is that your AppSec team is going to be doing all the security things, doing the testing. And there's also this concept of, I need coverage. Every time my cat is opening the door. I have to do all the security things. I need more coverage. I can't miss alerts. And it's very much driven by what incidents the organizations are facing. So when you think of security teams or CISOs, sometimes they're not aware of very important cloud native development issues. So things like infrastructure as code templates and possible misconfigurations, sprawling numbers of APIs, the open source software. Once attacks happen or they face incidents, all of a sudden I got to scramble to go fix this. So it's can you work with your security team? Does your security team understand the developers, the developer workflows, how they want to work? They don't want to just get something sent to them about all the things they need to fix. They need something that gives them more understanding so they can do it with their timelines. Maybe it's in the normal tools that they're using to get issues about bugs and how to fix them. Just kind of change that traditional mindset of I need to do all the security things, I need coverage, I need more tools, instead I need to go talk to developers, see what they're doing, see how I can make things easier for them, see how I can automate security processes, make sure I can set policies for them. And at that point, it is shifting security left to developers where they have some security responsibilities, but then security changing to have more of a role where they have visibility and control. So they know the processes have taken place. They have visibility of different assets, which is more complex in cloud environments and types of cloud resources that are spun up and spun down. But they can get a better sense of risk and context and work more efficiently.
And a lot of what you're describing is, in fact, the development work. Even the infrastructure as code. There's code right there, so that does feel like responsibilities for the development team. And I don't necessarily disagree with the idea that the AppSec, my AppSec job is going to go away. I think a lot of AppSec tasks should, in fact, go away. They're dated. You were almost describing the waterfall method of lifecycle development. They're just smaller waterfalls.
Yes.
That's all. So what, in talking to CISOs or in the way you've seen organizations be successful in embracing cloud native apps with security, how do those teams work? Do you still see an AppSec team, or is it more of just that blended, I'll call it DevSecOps, or just a development plus AppSec developers on that team?
Yeah, and I love all the trainings and more resources that are out there because it's always getting better. And there is more, when I do research, I'll ask about what are the challenges with frequent release cycles, what are the security challenges, and the numbers of developers don't want to work with us keep going down, which is nice. I mean, I do go to CNCF events where it is more developer and DevOps focused and shift left focused. And I'm always asking, do you trust your security team? Do you want to work with your security team? And I also talk to IT and ops leaders at some of these conferences, and they'll talk about doing security things. And I'll say, well, how do you work with the security team? And I'll either get the eye roll or I'll get we've been hand in hand from the beginning because we want to strategically align. So I think the key is strategic alignment. So IT and ops and AppSec, their goals for application uptime, brand reputation, all of those things overlap. So if an application comes down, it's an operations issue, but it could be a security issue. So these teams, they have to come together better. When I talk to CISOs who are feeling like they're more successful with cloud native, if it's an enterprise company and they have a CISO, a lot of times I've heard a lot of, I had a traditional AppSec team, but they just didn't work well with the developers. They didn't have a developer or DevOps mindset. So I had to go find some DevOps folks who were interested in security, or I took them and I trained them, and they're the ones who are now in charge of the cloud native security stuff. But it totally depends on the organization, the size. There's different titles as things evolve too. There's security engineering teams now. I think SecOps is evolving a lot, which is something I'm working on a project right now on cloud detection and response with my colleague, John Oltzik. So he covers security posture in general, not cloud security posture. I cover the cloud part, and he covers hygiene, and he also covers SecOps and SIMs and other tools in that area. So we're doing this study on cloud detection and response to kind of see, and I told him, certain organizations that are cloud native, they may not have a formal security team or a SecOps team or a SOC. They might just have like an SRE. It just totally depends on the organization. And to me, it's if a security team can get aligned with the business goals, so they're enablers instead of blockers, then that's really the key to being successful, is figuring out how to build a program that's going to scale, that's going to use their staff and resources in the best way. And this is where the products and tools really come in, is the reality of the cybersecurity skills shortage. Our research just on tech spending intentions shows that the biggest skills gaps are in cybersecurity. And then when you look at the skills gaps in cybersecurity, cloud security is always at the top, and AppSec is usually kind of close to the top. I think things like vulnerability management and network security, kind of the older things, are usually closer to the bottom for the skills gap. So that's when you need those right tools, processes, policies in place, where you're making things easier for your staff so that they can scale.
So does that seem, because it feels like we've been hearing that number for, I'll say 5 years now, that there's that specifically talking around the skills gap around AppSec and CloudSec. Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of why? Is that, are we not educating enough people? Or are they not staying in it? Is it that there's so much more that they have to actually come up to speed on? Is there some sort of pattern you've seen around that possibly, or?
Yeah, I think it's just the challenges between faster development life cycles and scaling, understanding of DevOps. Maybe it's they want to feel like they understand. Sometimes there's coding or other kind of DevOps type of things. But then the other aspect of it is with cloud security, just the complexity of gaining visibility of the environments, because it's a dynamic environment. And it's a change in the tech stack, right? Like when you think of traditional InfoSec, it is the computing stack, as well as the applications that you're building. But with cloud security, a lot of the stuff that's done with the platforms is through the CSP. So the job of security, it moves up the stack to mostly just the application. So we talk about workloads and applications, but like, to me, all these different categories that are out there now, it's really protecting the applications, because that's what moving to the cloud does, is you just focus on building your applications. You can provision your infrastructure and you can build your applications. So then the security part becomes that part, and then also working with the cloud service providers to understand what they provide, tied in with what you're putting in the cloud, and figuring out how to secure that. So it's just, I think it's a different mindset for traditional AppSec, where they're thinking of the waterfall processes. They're thinking of, different kinds of testing and what happens where in the life cycle. Whereas with cloud native, it's more about making sure visibility is the constant, policy and control is the constant, but it's also, the challenges of gaining enough visibility to see everything, track everything, and then respond quickly. So, everything is about faster remediation and then closing feedback loops for who needs to make that remediation and helping them do it in the most efficient way. And a lot of the stuff that I find in the research through several studies is we'll ask, like, how are you doing different aspects that you need to do for security? And the amount of manual labor that's involved from managing multiple tools. There's a lot of wasted time deploying, managing, and like looking at the different tools and trying to compare what the findings are. That's a lot of time wasted. There's a lot of issues around, again, the things that scale quickly with cloud native. So things like access and cloud infrastructure entitlement. So I did a cloud security posture management study and looked at the cloud infrastructure entitlement management aspects. And there's so much that's done manually when, developers are setting entitlements to build their applications. And it's all about, some are it's human access or it's resource to resource access. And they provision it quickly. They often over provision it, and then they forget to pull those back before they deploy it. And then that's a big surface area that's proliferated that they need to control. Things like that, things like APIs. The access issues are big, but all these things that scale rapidly, like security just needs ways to figure out how to manage it and support it. So
part of that too is there's also a lot of confusion amongst you mentioned like tools, and I think this ties in maybe a little bit to John's question about the skills shortage. So VM very vulnerable. Everybody understands the old school VM tools, etc. And in your areas of coverage, there's SAST, DAST, IAST, SCA, etc. There's also a bunch of acronyms within the cloud now too. Yeah. So is part of this just because we've got a lot of acronyms that people aren't really figuring out who does CSPM or ABCDEFG or how does this fall into this category of confusion versus something a CISO needs to pay attention to?
Yeah, to me it's a challenge because a lot of times it's because, and I hate to say this, but like sometimes there's vendors that just don't know how to describe what they do, or when you're looking at security vendors and you're looking at all their websites, you like read through and there's all these buzzwords used, and some of it's, I was in marketing, so some of this is my fault of, there's buzzwords and you're trying to get SEO and you're trying to make sure a customer looking for something can find you if you have that kind of solution. But it doesn't keep up with how fast innovation happens with cloud native. And I can give you the example of I worked at a container security company, StackRox, and it was container security. We did runtime container security, and we wanted to build a category. We wanted to say we're the only ones who do something. But if you think about it, it was really AppSec, but we didn't want to compete with the Vericodes and the AppSec vendors because we weren't an AppSec company. And then so you try to create this category, but when you think of alignment with what are you selling or what are you trying to help a customer do, to me, like you have to prioritize what you do as understanding the customer's problem and figuring out how you're solving the problem and giving them value. And that's more of the key than like building a category or falling into an acronym, because with the acronyms, like by the time that the category and the acronym is created, there's already an a smarter, more innovative way to solve that, or a more efficient way to solve that. And so it's not keeping up with what the real problems are and the most efficient ways to solve them. So if I talk to a CISO now talking about what are they going to need to do to build their cloud security program, it's more about how can I scale my team to do the things that it needs to do? How am I going to gain visibility? How am I going to be able to make sure I meet compliance regulations and I'm not fined or I don't have incidents? And so it's more about risk management, things like faster response to threats, like the CDR research we're doing, and those are their real problems. So sometimes we'll do the research kind of aligned with some of these category names, but it's more because there's like buzzwords and all these vendors are trying to use it, but they don't do what they need to do to solve the real problem. So we try to dig into it to make some smart. We can say things about what
Sure.
organizations need that will work or what doesn't work.
Now, at the risk of creating more categories, when you speak to CISOs and you're talking about like how should they structure their org, how should they work together with IT and make this successful, I've heard a couple whispers of the cloud center of excellence, and the concept of a center of excellence isn't necessarily new at all. But I'm curious, is that something that is a category that's going to emerge and replace DevOps, DevSecOps, or is this just another label for cats and dogs living together?
I love that. I think cats and dogs living together. Or sometimes I do think like there's these other titles created to get away from marketing people who decide they need to focus on certain titles to go after. So, I mean, this is the stuff that we track in every research project we do. We'll ask about the different titles and what their responsibilities are. So we'll ask who has the budget, who has the decision-making capability, who does the tech evals, who sets the technical requirements, who are the users. And then we get these charts back on it. And we can also slice and dice that data into personas, into the company verticals or company sizes, and then we can usually find some interesting patterns. So yeah, Cloud Center of Excellence, we find an increasing number of that. I also see things like security engineers increasing, and then we track that a lot just to see and to again give advice to our clients so they can focus how they're communicating in the best way for what's going to help those people with what their jobs are and their goals.
We're all smiling now because one of your own personal clients is about to open the door, the little kitty. So we'll keep a track on that for the next several minutes as well. But Melinda, there's also, as you're talking to the CISOs, in that either the personas that, budget and controls, as well as, who's responsible, who has to write the "We Take Your Security Seriously" letter. Mm-hmm. Have you seen those is there something that surprised you in this particular research, meaning some org that's actually particularly mature that has a structure that is unfamiliar to you, or that you didn't expect? Or is there something? I'm just kind of curious, what stood out, or if there isn't anything that stood out, the opposite end of that is there security theater still out there? What are people doing that they should have really just stopped ages ago?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of security theater. There's also, this is where we try to help sort things out with just education and information. The thing that surprises me that I'm hoping to see less of is just like the clueless, I hate to say it, like just the clueless CISO who just doesn't know how to work with the CSPs. And just, again, has that old security mindset of, I'm going to set gates. The CSPs need to, run things by me. Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff just frustrates me because it's like, you're not going to have a job in 6 months because you just don't get it. And then I have seen more of I do see a lot of that. They're successful if they can find the right people who have that developer empathy. And the trend I'm seeing, again, is more training. You guys' show programs, AppSec programs, like Tanya Janka's doing really great things where there's more of that knowledge sharing, kind of empathy between groups, more of a collaborative feel than the bickering that was happening. And then the frustrating thing for me too, and I've seen this, I guess, before I was an analyst, is just the frustration of because of the skills gap, there are certain companies that are going to have advantages because they can hire a super genius team to go build some custom thing for their developers, and they'll do it with ops and their ops and IT team and security will build something really cool that their team can use. And this is where I get excited about my job now, working with the security vendors and some really cool startups where they're doing a lot of that custom building and then creating it as a solution that other companies can use to get those advantages of scale that you wouldn't be able to get because of the cybersecurity skills gaps. And how custom things have to be for each organization for cloud native, because it's so new. There's not canned ways to do things, or there are increasingly better packaged ways of doing things, but it's evolving.
So to drill into that, you're seeing they'll take, like, that vendor will take, our startup will take, like, a design partner, actually figure out how to sort of get the cookie pieces to go together, or puzzle pieces, and then I don't want to say they'll package it up and sell, but they'll share it with others.
Right. Yeah. They'll share it with others. And then, I guess the other trend that's interesting is I think it's very important for organizations to make their decisions based on evaluating what they have. So go talk to developers, go talk to other teams, work on alignment, work on training and awareness. Sometimes I see that organizations are going to pick like the best solution, but they're already a big customer of a certain vendor, and that vendor added some functionality that helps in an area that will be really helpful. So it's just like in any job, like, do you want to get new tool? Like, you might have certain tools in place. You really have to evaluate like what works well. Should I pull things out? Do I really want to rip everything out? There's just a lot of customization issues depending on every situation. And again, to me, like, this is why I like being an analyst. This is all, like, to me, I try to make sure people are informed, they can make the right decisions, because even though there might be some really great startup with an amazing innovative way to solve something, it might not be practical for you to go rip a bunch of stuff out and go use it. And to me, the key is, I work with a lot of the vendors in my space on trying to help them, smartly and articulately say what they do, be honest about what they don't do. We've been in the industry for long enough to know that the quick wins don't help you long term. And so, for me, a lot of it is like trying to help people cut through the BS and just like solve problems and figure out what can they do that's going to be good for their program and their needs. And then for vendors, how do you communicate it so you're really partnering with the customer and not just like trying to build a company that's going to make a quick buck and get acquired or whatever. It's like just focus on solving the needs of your customers, communicating that, and then that's how you're going to do well.
So I want to flip that one around. Now that we know that there are startups and vendors out there which are willing to assist customers in certain cases, if there's a large enough of an invoice, have you seen any signs for how one of these companies we're talking about that's understaffed or someone's in the wrong position or they need training, whatever else, how do they figure out who that vendor is? Or when they're comparing a vendor A to vendor B, is there something they look for? Do they bluntly ask, hey, can you help me with this? Any patterns around that?
Yeah. For me, and this is why we try to help organizations and especially startups, is I know this, having been at so many startups in a short period of time, is you're often in your bubble in understanding just what you do and why you think what you do is the best. So we work with the startups to give them that market view, so they can be informative in the right way and also use more objective info, because I think people are conditioned to not just believe what somebody claims they can do. Like, they want to try it, they want to use it, or they're going to listen to peers. So for those companies, those startups, to me, it's key to have ways that organizations can understand the value, get demos, be clear on the website, again, cut the buzzwords and BS. And then for organizations, I think in the security industry, like I worked at VMware for a long time, and I worked at middleware companies, and it was like a technical crowd that is very skeptical, but security people are even more skeptical. And so if they get a lot of marketing buzz, or they can't quickly understand what you do or your value prop, then it's easy to get turned off. So, and organizations are trying to sort through that. And there's some, like in my area, these categories, there's so many vendors in each of these different, like CSPM, CWP vendors. Now everybody's claiming they're a CNAP. and then the customers just like they just have to like go by what's on the website, what resources they can find, what reviews, what analyst reports or whatever they might look at. But our advice with those organizations is just be educational, stick to information, and then for people trying to sort this stuff out is try it, talk to peers. All that kind of stuff is, the way to get to the truth, because otherwise it's just a lot of noise and stuff to sift through. To me, the benefit of cloud native is there's more. You can just try it and see how it works, or see if you get something. It's shorter sales cycles. You don't have to do the POCs as much. That's the benefit, and I guess the excitement of like SaaS products and things like that.
Yeah. You got some background commentary as well. Speaking of noise from Kitty,
yeah.
Kind of a follow-up question there too. You mentioned there at the end about it seems like the shorter demo cycles, proof of concept, proof of value, or whatever the modern great startup phrase is. As you said, don't chase the new hotness for CISOs. Do you also see them like in terms of changing tools as being cloud native or that modern cloud app development? Does it make it easier to change tools? Does it make it easier to resist a lock-in and say, oh, actually this add-on is useful to us, rather than we're already stuck with this vendor. They've got something that's mostly works. We'll just use that.
Yeah, and that's a trade-off and something to evaluate, because I also see this is the reason why sometimes you might not want to go with some startup, even if they seem to have a best of breed, if you're heavily invested in a certain security vendor. Like we watch a lot of trends of like how much flexibility can you get. I think there's a good trend moving forward to more subscription models and pay as you go, so you don't get as much lock-in issues. I think there's a lot of good innovate. This is like, I guess, why I get excited about this space compared to traditional stuff, is that if you have this, at Qualys, we talked about the SaaS model and the cloud model all the time, but those subscription models where it's more of a service instead of a product, I think is helpful in helping people be more flexible about what they use versus being locked in. So, we notice like now people are worried about financial stuff. Like instead of doing 3-year subscriptions, they are moving to 1-year subscriptions. And then maybe it could be that they'll use a startup for a year, but once their bigger company that they're more invested in, their bigger vendor that they're more invested in gets that functionality, maybe they'll switch to it. So that gives some flexibility. But to me, I think if you're a startup, the more flexible you can be, the more you can be upfront about pricing and packaging. If you can handle the scale of a lot of people buying your product through your website, those are all things to weigh. Like those are all the things you weigh at startups. Like again, having been there, worked on that kind of stuff is, find the right customers, design partners, and then gradually scale. But there is that move to, if you have a really good product and you can sell it through your website, you don't have to go through salespeople and lengthy sales cycles. It's more like you see the demo or you get to try it and all of a sudden you can do something, or you turn something. It's some kind of trial where you turn it on and you don't want to turn it off because you saw something you couldn't see before, or you can do something way easier. Yeah. And some of those, they may seem like other categories because their key capabilities, it's like that's worth somebody buying.
Well, we won't keep you too much longer, Melinda, because speaking of lock-in, looks like Kitty is ready to make a break for it somehow. But you've been talking, this focus here is cloud native, DevOps, developer-focused security. A lot of what you do is cloud app modernization and security. So what are some things that we could also be looking forward to from your writing, from your research for the rest of the year?
Oh, yeah. So super excited. We just kicked off a series with me. And so I'm in the cybersecurity segment, but I have another analyst I work closely with who covers DevOps and app modernization, infrastructure modernization. His name is Paul Nashawati. And we both go to the CNCF conferences, or he goes to the DevOps conferences and sees security is a big theme. We talk a lot. I look at his research and the trends that he gets for his research. And then I look at it and go, oh, what are the security implications? So things like WASM adoption, like what does that mean for security? So we just kicked off a series where we're talking about, faster development cycles. Well, what's the impact on security? We have a couple shows coming up on generative AI implications for development and for security. And then another episode on APIs and building developer communities and developer awareness of security. So those kinds of areas, again, if IT, ops, and security can communicate, and if I can communicate a lot with this DevOps analyst, this is the collaboration and conversations that need to happen.
Awesome. And so, Melinda, usually I end on a single question, but this time I've got two questions. First one is, for those of you watching the video, there's a wonderful cat trying to open a door in the background. What's Kitty's name?
Oh, this is Iris. And then
Iris.
I've got Manticore, her brother, who's like lazy in bed. So she's a lot more happy.
Excellent name. So lazy in bed just happens to be 3 words. And so that's a good setup, Melinda. I usually ask our guests to describe AppSec in 3 words. So Manticore has already taken lazy in bed. So what's going to be your response for this?
Yeah, so I think I'll say 2 words for this year that are extremely important are efficiency and efficacy. And then I guess, the third word would just be, the hyphenated cloud native. So,
Yep, hyphens work.
Cloud,
perfect. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Melinda. We got some incidental entertainment from Kitty as well, but we also got some great information from you about app modernization, cloud, and being strategic about how CISOs especially can approach this. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to see you guys.
It's good to see you too. I want to say thank you to John and thank you to everybody for joining us. Please do subscribe, hit that like button, check out the show notes. And speaking of getting into a mindset, check out Faded by Hotel Pools. We'll see you next time on Application Security Weekly. Bye, Iris.